Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. We are live here. Today is 13 August 2026, and we are live with you in order to come up and speak up and explain how scale and how calcium can incrustate and can create a problem and a blockage in our pipes and our drains, and also especially in our irrigation systems. I just want to ask if I'm reaching up to you okay at this moment, if I'm reachable and audible. So I'm just going to ask some feedback from my team, and like it was announced for today's live, we are coming up and explaining you about preventing blockage in irrigation systems. Well, behind me you see a grass field, and this is part of a total area of an irrigation that sometimes also gets blockage of the crust incrustation and calcification of the water in the pipes. So, in order to just to give me a moment. Okay, so I just got the confirmation that my voice and also my image is coming up to you perfectly. So, without any further delay, I'm just going to introduce you to the concept of calcification. So, in order for us to understand what is descaling, what is decalcifying existing incrustation, let me first bring us back to how does it work. Well, when we take a stone that is basically composed with different kinds of minerals, um, like silica, like calcium, etc., when the water passes through from the rainfall and cascades down and erodes on the rocks and on the rivers, it's going to melt and dilute part of these minerals. Now, all of that water that is then collected or gathered in a lake or in the underground or in a tank is going to have the minerals with it. Now, those minerals are not bad. They are, on the contrary, they are great. Well, let's just think about ourselves. Our bones and our skeleton is made out of the crystallization of phosphates, calcium, and other minerals. So, if that would not be a case, not only us, but also other elements like shellfish, like other kinds of shellfish and species, but also other elements in our under other animals would not have a way of surviving. Why? Because they need to get from out of the water those minerals and then bind them together and crystallize them inside their own bodies. That is how it works. Now, as human beings, we don't use water only in its natural form. So if that would be the case, then we would not have problems with pipes getting blocked with limescale. What is limescale? Limescale is indeed the crystallization of some minerals that can bind together and then stick and create a crust. Well, that crust can calcify not only on the pipes, but even, well, when you go to your dentist to do a stone removal from your teeth, if you don't brush them frequently, you can get more chances of getting the crystallization of the stone around your teeth. Well, that is also what happens inside the pipes. Well, inside the pipes, not only inside the house, but also specifically in the irrigation systems, where that can lead to drippers being blocked or jets that can get calcified and don't come up properly so that they are not fully optimized, or even that the inside diameter of the pipe can be reduced down by the forming of the crust inside, so that the diameter of the water passing is going to strengthen and be gradually smaller and smaller, reducing the flow, meaning that we need to increase the pressure in order to fulfill the needs of the irrigation. Now, why is this introduction so relevant, in my opinion? Because if we don't understand the cause, then we can discuss the means to avoid it without understanding what we really are going to do in order to avoid that situation. Well, if we are going to use a system to remove all of the calcium out of our water, then we can compromise the quality of the water on itself, and we can be in the presence of an unbalanced rate between the calcium that we have already discussed about, and that you can search in previous lives and also previous presentations that we did about the Langelier saturation index, the LSI. And that is a saturation, a calcium saturation index that and analyzes and puts in a scale what is the proper and the right balance. Because if we remove all of the calcium out of the water, we can end up with a water that is not encrusting and not forming those crusts, those calcification crusts, but it can lead to a very aggressive and corrosive water that is going to bite on the metals and do some destruction and destroy part of the pumps, elements, and other components that we use in our plumbings. So, finding a solution like, okay, if we go to one end and we change to another end suddenly, it can create some constraints. Now, another option would be to have a demineralization. So we can demineralize by using, for instance, a reverse osmosis process that uses a membrane. We also spoke about this in previous presentations. So you can search for it, and how we can prevent that the membrane that actually is like a membrane that splits the raw water from the clean water, and that membrane needs to be prevented from calcification. And in order to do that, very often we use either an ionic softener before, or we have to add an anti-scale product in order to make it so that the crystallization does not happen in the tissue of the membrane, so that the membrane can still have the pores perfectly open, so that the water can pass from one part to another without being blocked. Now, the trouble of using that is that it's not very harmless to the environment, especially if we understand that when we are really injecting a liquid, a product, a chemical product that is going to keep the calcium and the silica and other minerals liquefied and makes it so that they cannot crystallize, then what would our friends shells have to say about that if we make it so that the environment where they are actually living, their own habitat, they need to have the capacity to bind those minerals together? Well, but if we put a solvent, if we put that liquid in the same environment where they are living, then they will have no chance of creating their own shell. And like the other animals that live in the same habitat, I'm talking about the ocean, of course, and when we discharge those products into the ocean, where the fish needs to get the minerals in a proper way that they can crystallize and grow their own bones, that's going to compromise. Well, we don't live in the ocean, but we also need to get the calcium and the phosphates and the phosphor so that we can bind them in order to grow our own bones. Well, we all know what happens if we don't take care of what we drink and eat, and if we contribute with a decalcification of our bones, then we get suddenly a weaker structure of our own bones. And then we need to get some pharmaceutical help or supplementation in order to avoid it. But that's not what we're talking about. I'm just bringing this introduction to you so that we understand that everything in life and in nature was already perfect even before our existence as human beings. And what we do with our expertise and with our science is that we sometimes jump fast into a conclusion and we create a solution, we develop a polymer, we create a solvent in order to minimize the side effects of something that is purely natural as a crystallization. Because if this is a natural result of crystallization, if our bones is a natural result of the crystallization, also the crystallization inside our pipes is a natural result of the elements that the water has. So we can either do two things. We can live with it, or we can make it so that the life expand and the irrigation, for instance, or the hydraulic systems in our houses and in our cities can be free of those calcifications. Well, in all, and instead of using some chemical or some other invasive treatment systems, what we are announcing here, what we are presenting to you is that there are other solutions. Well, I've been working with these kind of solutions now for more than 15 years, and this is an electronical descaling system. Yes, an electronic descaling system. So it's a non-invasive system. If this is a water pipe, it has a coil made out of an electric cable around, and then another one. There are some technical specifications that we are going to show you in a video very shortly after this live, how to do that, how to install it, and how does it work, because there are some specialities, there are some places where it's going to be perfectly working, and there are some scenarios or some circumstances where this system can probably not work as best. And if you search in Google about the benefits or the non-benefits of using an electronical descaling in order to prevent and avoid the scaling in your pipes, you are going to find testimonials of yes, this is a fantastic solution, and some others that will say this was waste of money because it does not work and does not change anything on my water quality and the scale is still there. Well, that is a long process of explaining. So I will prefer to do a video that we're going to send or make public in order to explain how it works, how it can be installed, and anyone can install it. You don't need a specialist to install it. So we can guide you how to do the installations. But there are some specialities. Okay, so because it's a non-invasive system and because it's not a chemical change in the composition of any of the ions and the atoms of that are present in the water, especially not on the minerals, what it does is it creates an electromagnetic field inside where those ions are passing, and it makes it so that temporarily they will not bind together and will not stick inside the pipes. Well, this has like a short time of execution, and it can certainly not be installed neither before a tank, neither before a pump, and also not before a hot water tank or a hot water cylinder. So, because it works with the friction of those minerals when they are passing, and by creating the friction, the faster the water goes, the better it is, so that the electromagnetic field can work with those ions. So we cannot have it so that it will then stay still in some tank or reservoir, because then the static field and the static load that is created is lost. But I'm going to explain that further in detail in a different video. And then we are going to have our live on Instagram in 2 weeks from now, that I'm inviting you already to assist, and also to send to us your comments or your questions regarding that. So by having this system installed that is only plugged in to a regular socket, uses a minimum of electrical current, and so that is always live. So every time that the water passes, it's going to not only avoid future scaling building up, but also it's going to descale what is already calcified. So if you have a piping system, an irrigation system, for instance, that you've been dealing with this for the last years, by installing this system, you probably are going to see in the next 2 to 4 weeks suddenly looks like a milky stuff coming out of your drippers, because that is the liquefied calcium that is going to come out with the water as it's going to free itself from the incrustated mode. It would be like, imagine that we would have this calcified in the pipe, and we would suddenly start to decalcify, like if we would be going with sandpaper, solving this crust into a like a very fine dust, a very fine powder, and that would come out of the pipes as uh, so by being totally decalcified. So that is how that is going to work. And in order to do that, there are different sizes, of course, according to the size, the diameter of the pipe, and the flow. But we can guide you through that. And if you search on internet, there are hundreds of different brands and different manufacturers of these kind of technology. When I first met this technology, it was due to a large number of circumstances that I can share with you. When I was just in my office 15 years ago, when I was doing water treatment and water installations, suddenly one person knocks into my office and presented himself as being a producer, a manufacturer of a brand of anti-scale or the electronical descaling. And I had no idea what it was, because I only knew the other two ways of descaling or avoiding incrustation due to calcium. So it was the ion exchange or the reverse osmosis process by adding the anti-scale liquid. So when this gentleman presented himself, I was like, okay, I don't know you, I don't know the system, so I just let it go. But I kept his business card and a brochure. And the beauty of how the universe works is that a couple of days later, I was driving to one of my clients, and I stopped in a coffee shop to have a coffee and a sandwich. And as I was having my coffee, the owner of that place comes in and asks who was the owner of that white van with letters saying water treatment. And I said, well, I am. I thought that I had parked my car in a difficult place. And he says, well, then you probably are going to have the solution that I'm searching for. And I said, well, if I can help. So I went to see where the technical room where he presented that he used to have a perfect system to avoid the calcification in his water from his borehole, and that because he had broken or he had damaged the electrical circuit in his property, just to explain you, so he was connected to the grid, electrical grid, but he also had an aggregator, a generator. And so by starting the generator without stopping the normal current, he just blasted the whole electrical system in his property. And one of the things that blasted was his electronical descaler. So when he invited me to come and have a look, when I entered the technical room, I only saw the two electrical cables around wrapped around the pipe, and I did not see anything else because he had taken it off to see if anyone could repair it. Well, by the question if I could be of help to in order to replace that unit, I immediately remembered that a couple of days before, this gentleman just knocked into my office and said that he was a manufacturer of a solution like that. So I said, well, I don't work with a system like that, but I know somebody that does. So I called in the guy. We went there together. And as soon as he connected his device to the existing electrical cables, and he started off running the water and used a little bit of soap to do the soap test. Okay, as you all know, if you have hard water, you need a big quantity of soap in order to make the foam. And if you have the water soft, then you only need a little bit of soap in order to have the same result. So, because this gentleman was used to have this system, this running system with an electronical descaler for more than 5 years, he immediately recognized that yes, that system was compatible with the one that he had. And then it was funny that the inventor of this brand that this gentleman created was like an evolution on the system that he used to be representative of, and that brand is called Scale Blaster, and it's manufactured in the United States, and they are still in business, they are still working, and they are pioneers in this technology. So you can find many videos, many explanations on Scale Blaster. I'm not using Scale Blaster, but I'm very grateful to this brand because it was somehow an introduction for me to understand that this is a technology that works, functions, and that I know for more than 15 years. And now I use different brands and that I've been testing, and here I am to speak generally about it. But there are many different brands that you can search for. You don't need to come with me or to me to do that. So, but I'm more than glad to help you and to give you an offer, and also to explain you for your own case what is the best way to install that brand, and to consult you and to guide you in that solution. So that was how I got in contact with that system. And since then, I've been installing and serving many situations, many projects, not only for household usage, but also for bigger installations like irrigation fields, and also private and domestic irrigation systems, where the usage of an electronical descaling prevents the blocking of the drippers and also the blocking of the jets. Because when you have a small jet with different holes in it, if it gets stone calcification, calcium calcification, then instead of having six uh, places where the water is splashing out, if it gets blocked by half, then suddenly you get less water coming out of it, and eventually it will end up blocking. So very often you need to take them off, put them into vinegar or into another acid solution in order to melt the incrustated calcium. You put it back on, and you can continue irrigating, or sometimes you have to replace and cut the inside drippers if it's not going to be very easy for you to do the maintenance. So in order to minimize the need of wasting and replacing very often the irrigation systems, you can have a system that has maintenance free. So it just needs to be plugged, and it works 24 hours, 7 days in a week, 365 days in a year. And if there's no water passing, there's no harm. It's not going to warm up the water, it's not going to melt the pipes, and it can work in different types of materials of pipes. So whether it's polyethylene, PVC, copper, or other elements, only on iron or on stain how's galvanized steel, that the effect is not the best. So if you are using galvanized steel pipes, what I recommend is that you break off one section and you replace that for a copper pipe with the same diameter, so that the electromagnetic pulses can go through. Otherwise, the electromagnetic field can be inhibited by the stainless, by the galvanized steel pipe. Okay, so preferable PVC, plastic, or polyethylene pipes, or copper pipes. If you have a line with copper pipe, that's the best benefit that you can have. So I hope that this introduction and this explanation of how an electronical descaler works, and if you have any questions, you know that this is the right moment to come along and to ask us with questions. So if there are any questions, feel free, and I'm here to help them. So there is one question that asks that the if the water seems or looks like normal, and even so, do I have a problem with hardness, with calcium hardness? Well, yes, because the calcium in water is completely transparent. So it's not that you will see like a milky kind of water, and that would be the sign of having problems with a high rate of hardness, calcium hardness. And so that's not the case. So the water is crystal clear. There are detectors, there are testers that you can buy, and very cheap. If you go to any pool shop, you can buy a tester that uses a color testing. So it's very easy to go through, and I'm going to do that test when I'm going to explain you about how to adjust the electronical descaler, because one of the things is that there are limits into what's the maximum grade, maximum concentration of calcium hardness that you can use an electronical descaler. So therefore we also need to test it. So with a drop system, we measure when the color changes from reddish to blue, and then we count how much is from the solution B, in order to know how many milligram per liters our water has regarding calcium hardness. So by looking at the water, we can see that there is no problem. But there is one test that I just spoke about earlier, is if you need to put a bigger quantity of soap in order soap in order to get foam coming out of your hands, or when you put shampoo in your hair and you need like a good doses of shampoo in order to make it a big foamy, then it means that the water is quite hard. And if on the contrary, if you just need like a small drop of shampoo and you put it in and it makes like a big foam, means that the water has no calcium problems. So that is how it can be seen. But indeed, that is a very good question. Another question is, why does the presence of limescale reduce the efficiency of the equipment? Well, as we all know, stone, yeah, stone is a thermic barrier. That's why we have houses with stone walls, and that is to make it so that the heat does not go in and that the warm does not come out. So it's a thermical barrier. That means that if we have a heating system and we have to heat beyond a stone wall created by calcium incrustation, then we need to continue to heat, but the heat is not going to pass into the water. So I'm giving you an example. If you have a washing machine, the washing machine, when you program for 50 degrees Celsius or 60 degrees Celsius, means that there's inside the machine, inside the water drum, there is a heating element, and the heating element is a metal element that diffuses the heat, so it gets electronically heated inside, and then the heat has to come out of that metal into the water that is surrounding it. Now, if that element is covered with calcium, then means that we are giving the electricity. It's warming up from the inside, but the heat is not coming out and is not warming up the water. And that contributes with more time needed with electrical consumption in order to get the same result, because the thermostat, what measures the temperature, is merged in the water. So imagine that if you are using water that is perfectly decalcified and that there are no calcium built up around your heating element, when it starts heating, the time to heat up the water till 60 degrees Celsius is, let's say, 3 minutes. But if we put a layer of calcium around it, instead of 3 minutes, it can take 5, 6, or 7 or 10 minutes. And sometimes it also creates a possibility of short circuit because of the cracking that can occur by overheating. So if you are heating from inside the element and the heat cannot go out, then it can um, expand the metal and create micro holes so that the water can seep in and create an electronical short circuit. And that is normally what needs to be changed or replaced when you have a malfunctioning in your devices. So that is one of the examples how the calcium incrustation can indeed do a damaging and reduce the efficiency of our household um, systems and devices. So thank you for that question, because that is not very often um, brought up to light, and it's really important that we have a system that does not destroy the equipments, but on the contrary makes it so to prevent that they get um, lower efficient or less efficient, and also less probabilities of having damaged equipments that are using water and heating devices. So thank you for that question. Another question is, does limescale contribute to raise up the electrical usage consumption? Well, that was already answered in the previous question, because if that is making it so that the heat takes longer to reach up to heating the water, then of course it's going to contribute with having to have the same electrical resistance, the same electrical device warming up and consuming electricity for longer periods in order to achieve. I'm going to give you an example. If you want to go with your car and drive 100 kilometers, and if your regular speed is 100 kilometers per hour, you are going to take 1 hour to reach up to 100 kilometers. But if your goal is to reach to the 100 kilometers, but suddenly your engine is tired and you have loaded up your car with lots of baggage and lots of weight on it, and your speed is not going to be 100 kilometers per hour, but it's going to be limited to 70 kilometers per hour, the result is that you will have to use more fuel because you are going to take longer to reach up the 100 kilometers. So that's going to contribute with more energy, more costs in order to have the same. Thank you. Very good question. Are there any more questions regarding the blocking and the incrusting of the pipes inside and how that can be minimized by using an electronical descaler? And let me see, there are some questions here, and it says, what is the difference between filtering the lime scale and treating the hardness of the water? Well, basically, filtering the hardness by using an ion exchange filter is removing the calcium and other positive ions out of the water. They will be sticking to the filter, in this case an ion exchange filter that retains and holds those elements, those ions of calcium, magnesium, but also iron, manganese, and other positive ions. They will be kept there temporarily, and then they're going to be expulsed out and backwashed out it. So that is filtering the hardness out of the water, or the potentiality of having hard water. Okay, because having hard water is the combination of and the crystallization of those elements, and by removing them, by filtering them out of the water, we are of course avoiding that they are going to incrustate because they are no longer there. And the difference of treating the hardness, making it so that it's not going to solidify, crystallize, is treating it in a way that the water can pass up to the last end stage, which is when it's coming out of the pipes, whether it's a tap, faucet, a shower head, or an irrigation dripper. That is the end of the line for the water that was inside the pipes. So if we can make it so that we can treat it so that it's not going to scale inside the pipes, so it's going to be freed. So that is the difference between filtering what causes it and treating it in a way that it's not going to interfere and block. So that's my answer to it. So there is a comment together with a question that says, so the treatment of the water can extend the lifespan of electro domestic equipment. Yes, the answer is yes. And that is why we also, when we don't have systems like this, we can, for instance, put in our washing machine or in our dishwasher anti-scale. There are brands like, well, I'm just remembering one that is very famous. That's called Calgonit. Calgonit is one brand that of a tablet that you can add in your washing machine or in your dishwasher, and that is going to liquefy the incrustated calcium and the lime scale that was already in there. So that is something that you can use. So, by having a system that can make it so that we are not allowing or not creating the potentiality of those limescale to be formed, of course, we are extending the lifespan of our equipment and our devices. Give you another example. If you take regular tap water where the water is high rich in hardness, and you put it and you let it boil and you let it evaporate, what you're going to see once it cools down and you take the remaining water out is that you get a layer of calcium that is sticking to the pot, sticking to the pan. And in order to clean that, you need to have some anti-cal, or you have to scrub hard because it's like having a layer of stone covering the inside of your pot. Now, if we are going to install, or when we install an descaling system, you are going to see the same quantity of calcium, but with one difference. It's going to be um, like in a form of a non-encrusting powder that is on the bottom of the water, like sediments. So it's not going to glue itself to the pot, to the pan, but you, you're going to visualize it, so it's going to be visible. So that is also what happens when you start using it in the irrigation system, for instance. In the first weeks or first days, you're going to see that milky stuff pouring out, because it's going to decalcify. And once it's decalcified, it's no longer scale formed. So instead of being in a crust, hard material, it's going to be like in a powder form, free in nature again. So thank you for that question. And I don't know if there are any more questions to this subject. And yes, there is. How much or in ou no que é que se pode poupar ao prevenir a incrustação? Okay, how much can we save if we avoid the lime scale? Well, it's very difficult to say that it's going to save you 10 euros a month, or 100 euros a month, or even 1,000 euros in a month. Well, it depends on what kind of systems, what kind of equipment, but also how beneficial can the usage of an electronical descaler be in your specific case. So I'm not going to say any amount or any quantity, because anything that I would say would be a pure guess, and it would be like a shot in a million for all of the different scenarios that we can face. Like I said, it's a solution, it's a method that can be used, but there are some specialities, there are some particularities. That's why I said earlier that when you Google for testimonials on using electronical descaling systems, you'll get like a variety of answers. Some will love it, some will hate it. So it's very difficult to say, if you do that, you're going to save this, that, or that. So I'm not going to give any answer to that. What I can say is, we are here to help you and to guide you. So when you have a situation that you think, okay, I need to do something about the scale forming, whether it's inside of my house or in my garden, I need to do something about it. Share with us, and I'm very happy to do a first diagnose for you, just to say, okay, that in that case we can have a guideline to this direction, that direction, or that direction. And if I can be of help, I will certainly help you and guide you. So I think that that's the best answer that I can give you. So a system of water treatment um, can resolve a problem of that can resolve the problem of the lime scale, does require a lot of maintenance. Well, depends on the system. So if it's an ion exchange filter, we need to adapt the kind of filtration with the maximum daily volume that we are going to treat. So imagine that it's for a house, and that we have a 3-bedroom house used by 5 people that all come together or all shower in the same period, or very short after each other. So imagine in a regular house, everybody goes and has a shower first thing in the morning between 7:30 and 9 a.m., and that the flow is going to be instantaneously. That means that probably we will need to have a system that can adjust the maximum flow rate according to the quantity of resins, so that the decalcification, the softening, can happen in the right proportion. Otherwise, Imagine that you've got, or that you buy, or have a system installed that can only treat, I would say, 1,000 liters per hour, but when you open a shower, the flow rate is already 2,000 liters per hour. During that time, the water is passing too fast through the ion exchange. And thinking about this word, an ion exchange means, like, imagine when you go to the supermarket and the person that is in the cash dispenser is passing your products. So when it's doing beep, beep, beep. So let's say one product per second, and you suddenly have 100 products to be passing in the cash register. But imagine that you are in a hurry and you say to that lady, look, or that gentleman, look, I'm in a hurry. So you need to do that as fast as possible. So instead of doing one per second, okay, you need to do three per second. Well, it can go wrong. It can also go well, but I think that if you are rushing, 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 something can be left behind, or something can fall off and break, or whatever. So that means this is just a silly example to say that what is a right tempo, a right flow rate, cannot be exaggerated more than the technical specifications. So that means that we need to adapt the system to your reality. If that's the case, so we would require a maintenance in order to have the salt for the ion exchange ready. We have to make sure that the mechanically and technically the system is operating perfectly, and also that we are doing the maintenance automatically because it does the cleaning automatically, in the right order and in the right moment. So that requires maintenance, whether it's done by you, by a technician, whoever. In the other example that I gave, by having a reverse osmosis to demineralize and remove all of the minerals out of the water, we also have to have a maintenance, especially there, to make sure that the machine is operating perfectly and that the adding of the polymer is being adjusted with the right quantity in the right moment, the right tempo, in order to avoid the blockage of the membranes. Now, and the simplest, more easy way is by knowing that the electronical descaler is adequate for your own situation. It's only on the plug, working 24 hours a day, regardless of the flow. And it does not matter if you just have one tap open or five or six tap opens at the same time, as long as it's adjusted to that flow rate, it's working, it's doing its work. So uh, requirement of maintenance is a must, and it's not something that we can say, yeah, without this we don't need any maintenance, except on the electrical descaling system. That is a maintenance free solution for you if it's adequate and adaptable for your own system. And if that's also in use of city water, yes, it is. And very shortly, I'm going to share with you a testimonial of a couple that has installed this for city water, where the hardness of the water is brought down to the very minimum, but even still, they have installed an electronical descaler for their house. They had it already in their irrigation. That's why they want it also for the house. And since then, well, they will speak for themselves. I'm not going to influence you, and I'm going to share that video very shortly. So thank you for that question. Um, there's another question saying, what are the first signs that there is an accumulation of limescale? Well, the first signs is this: after you are having a shower and the glass wall of your shower cabin was left with spots of water, and if you allow it to just dry naturally, when you come back a couple of hours later, if you see spots that you cannot wipe off easy with just the dust, with just a dry cloth, If you need to use some anti-cal or some vinegar, cleaning vinegar, to remove those spots, that is the first indicator that you have a hardness issue that you have to deal with, and that those are the immediate uh, circumstances where you can see that you have a problem with your hardness and with lime scale specifically. So that is the time to jump in and to do something about it, or continue cleaning every day after a shower. That's the what I can say to you. Another question is, when the system is blocked, is it possible to recover the equipment without to replace them? Well, depends. Depends on how the water system is installed. But like I said, the electronical descaling system is, for so far I know, the only one that, after being installed, will descale the existing lime scale incrustation. So whether that is going to be sufficient to be installed before the washing machine, for instance, and recover and descale what was already calcified, that is something that I would say I would not say 100% yes. The technology says that it's possible, that it's feasible, but it depends on how your hydraulic system is working. So if that is just immediately before your washing machine and when the water is passing, it's going to descale what was already calcified around the heating element, for instance, just to give you an example. If the conditions are proper for the water to maintain the descaling capacity that was caused by the electromagnetic pulses, if that's so, then it's going to clean the existing incrustation. If not, if you are using, let's say, a hot water cylinder, and your washing machine is connected to the hot water, and after passing the electronical descale, it's going to be staying in the hot water tank before feeding your washing machine, I'm just giving an example, then maybe the efficiency and the effect of the descaling is probably not going to be optimized as it should if it would just be in one go. So it depends on your specific situation. So thank you for that question, and I don't know if there are any more questions, but if there are no more questions, or even if you have more questions related to this subject, I would like to invite you to continue to follow our work, because this month we are going to intensify the information regarding calcifying, decalcifying, incrustation, irrigation blockage, and how to deal with that. So some of the shorts and the reels that we are going to launch this month are going to be related with that subject, and some of the questions that you still may have in your head will probably be answered by the videos that we are going to share with you, exemplifying how we do it, what we do, and how it can be put and installed as best. But there's one other question that says, what is the most common error that people make when they try to resolve the limescale problem? Well, I think that the most common error that people make is to accept things as they are and not search for the best solution. And by searching for a solution, that they are cut off from their own intention of finding a solution by the first negative testimonial that they find on internet. So I believe that nowadays internet is a fantastic tool in order to get a world of solutions in your hand or in your screen immediately for many problems that you can come across. But on the same time, in the same time, it's also a very big opportunity for people to make unnecessary mistakes when they just um, cut themselves off by saying, oh, somebody here says that it did not work for himself, so I'm not even going to try. Well, that is why I so insist that any case is different than another. And what can be a perfect solution for you can be a not solution at all, even for your neighbor. Okay, even if you are sharing the same kind of water, the same type of water, but if your hydraulic system is different than your neighbors, then for you it can work, for your neighbor it can be a disaster. And it's a completely waste of time and money. And that can contribute with negative publicity and discouragement for people that would like to have a solution. So that is, in my opinion, the most common error is that you just cut yourself off and you allow yourself to be demotivated by one or two examples. And we as human beings are normally intended, or tendentially, we give more ears to the negative, um, feedback than to the positive feedback. Just think that when there is a like a car accident on the other side, on the other contrary side of that you are driving, where do you see the queue accumulating? Well, actually, you see that in both lines, because the curiosity to the negative is so big that even if you are not a fire department or you're not a medical agent, you want to reduce the speed to see, just to see, because the negative, the curiosity for the negative is so live in us as human beings that we very often give more attention to what did not go well than to all of the other positive um, results and testimonials. So I believe that what I see as the biggest mistake that people do is to listen to the negativity instead of searching for a adequate and adapted solution. So thank you for it. And if there are more questions, feel free to send a direct message, send us an email. You know how to find us. And I'm going to be sending you this last advice. We need calcium in our environment, in our body, and all of the living elements need calcium for their existence. And we have to be very grateful to the various and the existence and presence of all the minerals that exist in this beautiful planet so that we all can live and survive. So be aware of that, and don't do the first solution that you come across without asking yourself, what is the effect that the usage of this technology is going to have for the future of the planet, of my great grandchildren. Don't think about 2026, think about 2056 or even beyond when you make your own choice. Is this the best choice that I'm going to do? Is this the more ecological choice? Or am I just going to be very selfish and resolve my immediate problem, and I don't care about the future generations? So, this was my advice to you, my recommendation to you. So, like the other beautiful song, always think twice. First, is this on my own benefit, or is this benefiting also the environment around me? Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. But thank you for being more aware of your own bones. because they are made out of calcium as well. See you in the next live. After 2 weeks, we're going to be live on Instagram. And next month, we're going to be here in YouTube in the second Thursday of the month, 1700 Lisbon time. See you there. Thank you all.